I'm speaking with Lenni Brenner, activist and historian. I've interviewed you a number of times over the years, and I wanted to talk to you about your background, your life, because it's not the usual one. We don't have a lot of time, but why don't we get into it? Where were you born?
Well, first off, how much time do we have so I know?
15 minutes for your whole life.
My whole life in 15 minutes. Okay. I was born in Brooklyn. Yay! Right. Okay. Into an Orthodox Jewish family. And but at the age of 5, I moved to the Bronx, also in New York, and that's where I grew up. The key things in terms of my childhood, in terms of my later development, were two things. One was, as I say, I grew up in an Orthodox Jewish family until sometime around the age of 7. My mother decided to give up the kosher laws, all right? And after that, even though I was later bar mitzvahed in a Orthodox synagogue, the reality was we weren't Orthodox at all, okay? I've discovered that that's a common way that people evolve out of Orthodoxy. Okay. At the same time, I mean, I can tell you literally, at the age of 7, my brother was bar mitzvahed when I was 7, and he got a gift book called The Story of Mankind by Hendrik William Van Loon. And I would say that that's where, if I'm a sinner, that's where it comes from.
All right, we're only up to age 7. We got to move a little fast.
I understand, but I'm saying this is important. What happened was that this book was written by a Dutch Protestant, okay, and it went into the whole history of mankind, but of course its big feature was Protestantism and, you know, the revolt against Catholicism, etc., etc. So I remember I read it at the age of 7, okay, and I remember going over to a Catholic church and, God damn, it's right, there they are praying in Latin. You know, I mean, and I realized this is nonsense, you know. And as I say, at the same time, my family was giving up Orthodoxy, and I say that I became an atheist by the age of 10. Now, actually, it was probably a little before, but I used the age of 10 because at the age of 10, in those days, New York City had a thing where once a month, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, if your parents allowed you, you would be sent to your synagogue or your church, etc., for religious instruction. And one day I decided, what am I doing? I have nothing to do with this synagogue and this Judaism nonsense, etc. So I walked back into the school to see what the kids who were, you know, didn't go to these things were doing. And the principal of the school kicked me out. You know, get over to that synagogue. So that's when I defined myself as, by that time, I'm an atheist, if you know what I mean. And I've been one ever since, etc. But also, I've been a historian ever since the age of 7. That's how I define myself.
Now, you're a historian, but you didn't finish college, is that right?
I not only didn't finish college, I never went to college, right? Because what happened was, at the age of 15, I saw a racial incident, and I decided I'm sick and tired of this stuff, and I went down into Greenwich Village, which is the center of American leftism, etc., and I went and I became a socialist, okay? And let's put it this way. On the first day that I went down there, one of the people that I met was Jim Farmer, who later became one of the organizers of those famous bus rides through the South, etc. Michael Harrington, the writer, etc. My attitude was, I actually went to college for 3 weeks as a non-matriculating student, meaning that I wasn't counted as a student. And I realized these guys got nothing to tell me that I ain't learning 10 times more from the people that I'm hanging out in politics. So that's the extent of my college education, you know, is 3 whole weeks. as a non-matriculating student. But I joined the youth section of the Socialist Party, the Young People's Socialist League, at the age of 15 in November 1952. And, you know, on one of the other shows that I did with you, we were talking about conspiracy theories. Okay, are you ready for this? And this is certified for sure. What I didn't know when I joined the youth section of the Socialist Party was that Norman Thomas, who was then its most famous spokesman and had run for president several times, etc., had not only become a CIA agent by certainly by 1952, he was taking money directly from the hand of Allen Dulles, the head of the CIA, who he knew back in the good old days when they went to Princeton together. Okay, so, but I left. I and several other people, we got disgusted with the Socialist Party, and we used to call them State Department Socialists. We didn't know about the CIA business then, and I joined another group called the Independent Socialist League and the Young Socialist Alliance, led by a guy named Max Shachtman, who had been a follower of one of the first three Trotskyists in the world. Okay, and again, are you ready for this? Talking about conspiracy theories, eventually Shachtman not at that time, but eventually drifted over way to the right and supported the government of the United States in the invasion of Cuba, you know, the Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba and so on and so forth.
Vietnam too.
Yeah, yeah, all that kind of stuff. But I, of course, I broke with him before that. I left the Shachtmanites in 1958, I think it was, and I became, I joined the Young Socialist League, which was the youth section of the Socialist Workers' Party, which was what used to be called the Orthodox Trotskyist group. In other words, these were guys who saw themselves as direct followers of Leon Trotsky and pushed his ideas. I went out to Berkeley, California, okay, and I was there. I was in the Young Socialist Alliance, this Trotskyist group, and since this is what's this now, 1963, let's say, but 61, 63, etc. Remember, I had been a leftist since 1952 and a historian since the age of 7, so I knew a lot. I knew a lot more than a typical lefty of that age, of my age, and I was like a leading public speaker for the Trotskyists out there, and I was involved in the Berkeley free speech movement. I had been arrested for possession of marijuana and granted probation. Okay, and then when the Berkeley free speech, this was before the Berkeley free speech movement, but when it happened, I was, you know, still making speeches, and I was grabbed by the cops during the free speech movement, and the University of California had the judge revoke my probation, and they sent me to the penitentiary for a term of 1 to 10 years, okay? I'm in the courtroom, the judge sentences me, they put me in an elevator to take me up to the holding tank upstairs. I don't walk more than a foot outside the elevator, and a guy taps me on the shoulder and says, "I know you. I heard you speak at Laney College during the Cuba Missile Crisis. My name is Huey Newton." Okay.
The Black Panther leader.
The founder of the Black Panther Party. I'm on my way to the penitentiary, and the first person that I meet is the guy. He hadn't founded the party yet. He had heard me you know, a couple of months before, during the Cuba Missile Crisis, or a few months before, and introduced himself to me. And we spent 4 days. He was going off to the county farm on some petty crime, and I was going off to the penitentiary. So again, it's, you know, one of these kind of chancy kind of things. And then again, I'm using chance. I mean, you know, as a focus of my life here. After I wrote Zionism in the Age of the Dictators, I went to Beirut. I'd written it, but it hadn't been published yet. But I went to Beirut, and I discovered that Vanessa Redgrave was there. She was very anti-Zionist, etc. She was at the next hotel, and I called her up, and I said, look, my book is being published in Britain, etc., etc. And she said, can you send a copy of the book to me, you know? And then a few days later, I actually ran into her in Beirut, okay? And again, she said, hey, you know, send me a copy. The next thing you know, I'm back in New York. I get a phone call. This is Vanessa Redgrave. I'd like to buy the movie rights to your book. She bought them for $10,000. Okay? All right?
The movie's not out yet, though.
No, what happened was that we met several times after that, you know, planning the movie and all of that. What happened was she was going to do a concert. She does a little singing. She was going to do a concert with the Boston Symphony, and the Zionists drove her off the stage. And what happened was she had to go to court and, you know, fight them and so on and so forth. Now, what I learned out of that was when you are a movie star like her, your time is laid out for the next 10 years. You're going to do, you know what you're going to do for the next, you know, the next 10 movies or whatever, you know. So when the time that she was going to devote to making the movie got devoted to defending herself, and then she had to make a movie. So we never made the movie.
Now, you're mostly associated with the Middle East and Zionism, but that was not what you really started out doing, right?
Right, right. I was arrested 3 times here during the Black Civil Rights Movement. That's aside from running into Huey, you know. And what simply happened was that one day, as a historian, I went and I read what was then the new Encyclopedia Judaica, and I saw an article on the Haravara, the transfer trade agreement between the Nazis and the Zionists, and I read it. And then in 1973, yes, during the Second Arab-Israeli War, I was in a debate in the Berkeley University of California Square, and I ran into a guy named Shimshon Vigador, whose father was the editor of the Encyclopedia Judaica. And I mentioned this article to him, and he said, yeah, I'd heard something about Nazi-Zionist collaboration. So that's what put me into studying that. And, you know, from then on, I would say that the Middle East is my top priority. But I want to emphasize that I'm anti-Zionist, but I think that the anti-war movement in the United States isn't saying enough about America's alliance with Saudi Arabia, you know, and all those other fine folks out there.
Let's take a